Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the final day and the third from last session slot, 360 iDev. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Richter, and I've come here today to talk to you a little bit about remote. Over the years, I've noticed that a lot of folks have been written, a lot of articles published about how to make remote work at a company, why your company should embrace remote, how you should institute remote, the pitfalls of being a company and profitability around remote. But there's been a huge void of resources for the person who's actually working remotely and how they can be successful. So while I'm going to touch a little bit on the benefits of the company and some of the remote stuff that's going on out there, primarily what I want to talk about today is how to be a good remote team member. Just my own personal curiosity's sake, how many people in here are currently working remote jobs? So you guys probably all have a pretty good idea how to make it successful. Like I said, we talked about the art of remote today, which I also like to call working without pants. And hopefully everybody's familiar with this joke. It's that whenever you're on a video call, you can't see the pants. Since there's a bunch of people from my own company in here, I want to dispel the myth right from the start that I'm not wearing pants at work. A lot of times I am wearing pajama pants, but there's always some level of pants being worn. I started my first company in 2004, and I made the decision very early on to go totally remote. And there's two big factors to that. The first is I was in my early 20s, and I couldn't really afford office space. The second, and way more important reason, was I didn't want to go into an office. Even as a single person and a 2, 3, 4, and so on person company, not wanting to go into an office myself has always been a big driving force for me working and running remote companies. So over the last 13 years, I've led 3 different consulting companies on mostly Mac and iOS, on completely remote workforces, which is unusual in this industry. A lot of times you see mixed teams. We'll have a physical office and then 10 to 20% of your team is remote. So I have an interesting bit of experience with just entirely remote. And the other nice part about it is, as a consultant, we went in, we did work for a lot of companies that either were entirely remote themselves, partially remote, or had no remote at all. So despite the fact that I've been 100% remote for the last 13 years, I have a lot of experience integrating and working with companies who have mixed or completely non-remote teams. And I've definitely embraced the remote life for the last decade and a half or so. I even spent 3 years living on the beach in Key West, which I think is the dream for everybody. Above and beyond, for those that don't know Marshall Craft, it's not a 2 or 3 person shop. We actually do consultant work for some very large clients. And the past 3 years consecutively, we've been named one of the Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies. So over the time, I've probably interviewed more than 1,000 candidates for remote jobs, and I've definitely hired more than 100 people into remote jobs over the years. So I have a pretty good feel for what people are looking for there and how to be successful. And it's easy right now to find a really talented mobile developer or mobile designer or even a non-mobile developer. There's a lot of people who are doing it, and especially if you have a remote company or a remote job, you're getting applications from all over this place. So we don't have a problem finding talented developers. We have a problem finding talented developers who can work in a remote workforce. And it's a shame that some really talented people just can't perform in that environment. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can better perform in that environment and how you can make the transition to being a remote employee, or how you can better do your job if you're currently remote. But first I want to talk a little bit more about remote. So a couple of years ago, I gave a talk here at 360 iDev called The Last Job, which talked about how robots were going to come and take all of our jobs. And over the last few years, that's kind of proven true. A lot of the stuff that I talked about has been popping up, and we're seeing kiosks and fast food places, and we're seeing all kinds of interesting changes to how we automate the workforce. But however, before we get to a situation where there are no more jobs, which I still am very sure is happening, but it's a ways out, so you don't need to A lot of the workforce, I think, is going to have to go remote beforehand. And there are already a lot of jobs above and beyond what you think of usually as software developers or IT people who work remotely. One of the big ones that started taking off in the last few years is remote customer service. When you call up a company like Amazon or Walmart and you talk to customer service reps, a lot of the times you're talking to somebody in their own house. And they do the support from home, which is a big change from the call centers that most of us grew up with in the 90s and the early 2000s. Another remote position that people really kind of missed when it happened is drive-through lanes. McDonald's led the drive on this, and if anybody knows how McDonald's works, they're extremely focused on efficiency and making sure they're squeezing every second and dollar out of everything they do. They've been piloting it for about 2 years now. It's not every McDonald's yet, but it's starting to turn into a lot of McDonald's. When you pull up to a drive-through now, you don't actually talk to somebody inside the restaurant. You talk to what is in essence a call center in Santa Maria, California, and they take your order there and then they patch it through to the restaurant. The restaurant fulfills the order, which is actually a really brilliant way of doing it because you can take orders back to back for many different restaurants at once, and you don't have all that downtime that they normally have. This is something I kind of talked about in the other talk I did about robots taking our jobs. It's really fascinating to me. During the Iraq War, we really pioneered the use of remotely controlled drones in combat and reconnaissance and patrols. And a lot of these drones are flown from an airbase in Nevada. And the military had all kinds of incidents with it, where we had post-traumatic stress disorder in people who were in Nevada, and they had wartime type interactions, and they would go home at night to their families after dropping bombs and stuff like that. It's a whole new world for the United States Air Force and military how to deal with this. But this is a remote job in essence. You're doing the job outside of where you would typically have to be to perform the job. And it's things like this I think we're going to be seeing a lot of over the years. Airline pilots controlling multiple planes from a hangar as opposed to being on each plane. And airline pilots, 95% of the work is taking off and landing. Most of the other time they're just sitting around making sure nothing goes wrong. If we can have one pilot take off and land several jets at once, then we really cut down on the cost of air travel. So introducing remote work in this kind of atmosphere is something we usually don't think about, but it's something that is happening. Surgical robots are something that's been taken off. And right now, the surgeons are in the same room and they're actually controlling the robots. I don't know how much longer they're going to be controlling the robots, but even in advanced fields like this, where you can possibly think that a surgeon might not have to be in the same hospital he's doing an operation in, is really interesting stuff. There are a lot of cases where we have to fly to specialty hospitals for treatment. People from around the world have to travel to get cancer treatment or specialized surgeries and stuff. If we start thinking of a world where a doctor can be in Oklahoma performing a surgery in Germany, it starts to open all kinds of really interesting doors to us. And the final thing I want to talk about, because it really freaks me the hell out, is these telepresence robots. I don't know if I can actually ever work with one of these things. I think I might try to kill it or something, but any job can really be operated remotely once you start getting into the crazy world of telepresence, which is something I don't really think is a real thing. It's like looking at those hologram video games in the 80s and stuff, and it was like, yeah, the technology's there, we can do it, but I don't think this is ever going to really catch on too much. It's hard to talk about remote without talking about why it's important to the companies. And I don't advocate trying to convince a company or convince your employer to shift to remote. It's usually a lose and uphill battle. They kind of go in one toe and they don't really embrace the situation. They get a bad taste in the mouth and they back right out. But there are a lot of benefits to the company and to the employee for being remote. The most important one, and the one I talk about to our clients all the time, is a worldwide pool of talents. If you're based in San Francisco, in Denver, in Austin, and you're hiring people for only a very specific area, you have a very small pool of people that you can work with and have the opportunity to employ. Especially if you're someplace like San Francisco, you're also competing with every other company there. And you lose out on a lot of talent. Some of the best developers I've ever worked with over the years have lived in rural cities. They've lived in Nebraska or Maine or Vermont, and they didn't want to be in big cities for family reasons, for personal reasons, for just style preferences. And being able to work with those people is a huge benefit to any company out there because it really opens up the talent pool. Going along with the worldwide pool of talent is you start looking at a lot lower cost of living. Technology companies, a lot of them are based in the Valley. As we know, the costs in the Valley are completely out of control. When you can hire a developer that lives in Nebraska, as opposed to one that lives in San Francisco, you can pay them what they would expect in Nebraska, likely higher than they would expect in Nebraska, and everybody's happy. The company's happy, the employee's happy, the clients are happy, the product's more profitable. There have been a lot of studies done on employee happiness in remote workforces. The reality of the situation is nobody likes to go into an office. It's a foreign environment. You're not as productive. The end of the story is really employees are happier and they have higher morale if they're allowed to work remotely. And again, those same studies have shown us that you have a more productive workforce. A lot of that is because you're not wasting time in the commute, you're not being distracted by other people in the office, but a lot of that's also, people tend to be more productive where they're comfortable. In home offices, people tend to just be a little bit more comfortable. And sometimes, most importantly for a company, it can help lower their overhead costs. If you have a big office that you need to put a lot of workers into, moving to remote, shift all those costs onto the employee, who do it in their house, which they have anyway, so it's not really an additional burden for them. And something to make us feel a little bit friendly and good at the end of the day is economically, or it's eco and safety friendly. If you're not driving to work, you're not burning fuel in the car, you're not paying the AC in the office, there's much, much less risk of safety incidents at work, people slipping in stairs, getting stuck in elevators, all kinds of crazy stuff that happens at work. A lot of those risks do drop right off the bottom of the chart. So this is a graph that I look at fairly often when I'm looking at remote stuff. This is the median price for a 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, a rental. And you can see just how crazy it's gotten in beats out there. So if you're a company and you're looking to hire in San Francisco, it just starts to become undoable at a certain point. You go through all the venture capital money trying to bring people in. Then they stay for 6 months and they leave because everybody's competing for the same workforce. But in reality, remote's not for every company. It's nice to stand up here and be an advocate of remote and say, every single company needs to be remote. This is the only way of the future. This is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to work. The reality is it's not that simple. A lot of what I see with companies resisting the remote mentality is what I like to call the button seats approaches. You have an old school manager who has to see people working. And if he doesn't see people working, then he doesn't believe people's working. And I had the same problem with my parents when I started working remotely in 2004 because I wasn't going into a job, and doubly so since I had started my own company and I was working out of a bedroom. They didn't believe I had a job for years and years and years. And I think for 4 or 5 years they were still mailing me job applications like Home Depot and stuff. And it was just a really long time before they figured out how it worked. And I think they still have a mentality that it's not really a job, but the fact that I'm not homeless yet has kind of showed them that there has to be some money involved in staying in my house all day. Another big problem that companies have that is kind of built with remote is any kind of mentorship. We've done interns a couple of times in the past, and it's something that doesn't really work out well remotely. It's hard to bring a new developer up. It's hard to teach them the rules of the rope. You just can't get that same hands-on experience. It goes even a little bit beyond internships. Even junior and sometimes mid-level developers don't get that coaching and training that they need to be able to rise to the ranks of a senior developer. And that's a big problem for a lot of companies, especially those that are recruiting out of colleges. Another big problem that companies run into is they just don't have the infrastructure for it. They're not designed to have remote employees. They have no way to communicate with remote employees or attract remote employees. And those infrastructure costs can be vastly huge for the first time setting them up. And finally, there are additional legal and security concerns that come up a lot if you're working on anything classified, for example. If you're working on anything sensitive, you can have a lot of problems with people remotely. More importantly for us, since I don't know how many people in here are actually business owners who are hiring remote people, but most of them don't care what the benefits of the business are. You care about the benefits for you. So the big one I always hear is no commute. And as somebody who has never really had a super long commute, I can't really wrap my head around why this is such a problem. But whenever we talk to people about remote work, we say, what's the reason you want to be remote? More so than I want to see my kids grow up, or I want to have a home life, or I want a more flexible schedule. And you come back and say, I don't want to drive to work anymore, it's killing me. So people out there clearly have ridiculous commutes. One that I've taken great advantage of myself is the flexibility to live anywhere. In the last 13 years, I've lived in 7 or 8 states now, and it's been very nice to be able to relocate to cheaper cost of living areas, to try out different parts of the country, and still have the same job. Moving right now for people who aren't moving for work is a huge stress factor of having to find a new job, and it's a great benefit to remote employees. We see a lot of people who get hired into remote jobs for the first time and then decide, hey, I'm going to finally get out of California, I'm going to finally get out of New York, and I have the ability to move where I've always wanted to go now, and I don't have to worry about the job being available if I want to go to rural Vermont. So this one isn't always necessarily true, but I have seen it correlated pretty directly to remote workplaces just by the very nature of how remote has to work, is they're more likely to allow flex time. I've seen very, very rarely remote workplaces, especially that don't have mixed remote office people, institute a very fixed 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 kind of work time, and then allowing different lunch breaks and things like that. And that's what I just like to call treating people like adults. Software engineers, software designers, project managers, architects, these are all professional jobs. They're not jobs that you're getting right out of high school. They're not jobs that you're not expected to carry yourself like an adult. And all too often I find that companies treat people in professional jobs like their children. You have to be at your desk at 9 o'clock, you have to let us know what you're doing, you have to go on a stand-up every morning and tell us what you're working on. It's really quite embarrassing that the industry has taken that kind of turn. Treating professional developers like they're teenagers, not to disparage any teenagers in the crowd. This one's actually kind of surprising, and I looked up a couple of studies on it because it surprises me. I remember that Simpsons episode where Homer starts working from home on the computer, and he's talking to his doctor, and he's massively obese, and the doctor's asking what he does for a living, and he says, something sitting down and snacking all day. Not working with the computer. So, I mean, the mental image of you sitting in your house all day, you'd think you would be less healthy. But what we find, and what the studies have found, is that people who work remotely tend to be more healthy. They tend to get out for walks on lunch breaks. They tend to have a little bit more time during the commute, where maybe they go for a run or they exercise. And then, most importantly, for anybody who's actually ever trying to lose weight, diet, and get in shape, it's not so much about the exercise; it's about what you eat. And when you're at home, you have an easier selection to better food, healthier foods. When you're in the office, there's a lot of peer pressure to go out and grab, quick lunch with the coworkers and stuff like that. So you tend to just eat more unhealthy. And the one that I think is actually most important for people, and what we hear, when we talk to people who work for us remotely, and they come back and tell us why they feel like working with us remotely, it's because they get to spend time with their family. A lot of people, they have the young kids and stuff, and they're in their 30s and 40s, and that kind of peak income career mode. You have, kids growing up. They're in elementary school, they're going through middle school. And when you're working 80 hours a week at a job and you're commuting an hour and a half each way, you miss a lot of that growing up. Working remotely really gives you a lot of ability to spend time with your family, with your pets, with your children, with your wife, with your husband. You can actually see your personal life go by, which is nice. And at the same time, remote isn't for everybody. Everybody recognizes this picture from Mac Rumors. That's the new Apple office layout for the spaceship building. I struggled a lot with how to talk about that remote isn't for everybody because it's hard to get up here and say to the people that, some people just won't succeed in the remote workplace. It's hard to say, hey, because of X, you're not going to succeed, or because, we've noticed this trend of the year where people in this kind of group don't succeed. So I tried to remove those biases and find a kind of a graceful way of talking about this. So we all know there are extroverts and introverts, and there are people who get energized being around other people, and there are people who have the energy sucked out of them being around other people. The people who are looking for a lot of social interaction, I see that they really struggle in remote a lot. They have a network at work where they socialize in, and that is very, very hard to replicate. Despite 13 years of trying to figure out a good way to replicate that social interaction that you have in the actual office, I haven't been able to find a way to really do it. And what we see, and I hate to say this, and there's no other really way to say it, is very young developers coming right out of college. They went through high school and college, and they have their social network based on their classes and people in their dorms and stuff like that. And they grow up in the startup type of world, and then their friends become the people that they work with, and they have this close-knit kind of work relationship. Those people tend to really struggle in remote because they're looking for a social aspect, they're looking for a friendship aspect at work, and remote is hard to get that in. The people who have a lot of hobbies, who have spouse and children, they tend to perform, or not perform better, but they tend to be much happier in a remote workplace. Some people also just have a need to be micromanaged, and nobody's ever going to want to admit that they need to be micromanaged. We always heard this called self-starting in school. He's a really good self-starter, and a good self-starter on the resume. It's basically the lack of being micromanaged is, I think, what that means. And somebody needs to be looking over their shoulder and saying, all right, this is what you need to do next, or you just finished this, okay, move on to this. There are a lot of people who just work better in that type of environment, a closely managed, closely overseen environment. And that kind of stuff does exist in remote, but it's just naturally harder to have real strict management in remote. So I talked about the stuff I need to talk about. I talked about the overhead stuff that you can't talk about remote without. But now I want to spend the rest of the time talking about how to really be awesome at remote, and how to have a good time doing remote. As you can see up here, I have my bags and stuff. John moved my talks. I'm going to plane him. I have to catch a plane right after this. I'm right out the door. So unfortunately, one of my favorite parts is answering questions and talking to attendees right after the talk. I'm not going to be able to get to do that today. So I want to encourage anybody who has questions or concerns or wants to ask something to just shoot your hand up in the middle of the talk, and I'll be happy to talk about them. Because if you have a specific question, it's going to be more important than the stuff that isn't specifically targeted. But what I hear from a lot of people, and a lot of people here sound like they're already working remote, so I don't know how applicable this is going to be to everybody, is that they have trouble finding a remote job. They want to work remote, they maybe have experience working remote, but every company they talk to is, butts and seats. So the first is there's a lot of job search engines specifically for remote popping up. The three big ones are up there. But even beyond these, because they tend to have a smaller subset of jobs anytime you're off with a major search engine, even places like Stack Overflow and Monster and Indeed and Dice have filters on the website now, so you can search for remote positions. So, the first step in finding a job is, of course, looking for a job. That's where you start. But there are always a lot of people interested in remote positions just because it's a huge pool of talent. So just finding a job doesn't necessarily mean that you're not heavily against the job. Networking with remote companies and employees, I think, is the most important factor. Whenever I've gone to hire somebody, before I posted a job ad, before I even looked on Twitter, the first thing I do is ask people who I'm working with whether they know anybody that thinks that they would be a good fit. We talk to them first. Because personal recommendation is worth 100 times a good resume or a good cover letter. So just talking to other people who work remotely, finding out what their companies are looking for, finding out what else is out there is a really, really good step there. So this is always a hard one for us to wrap our heads around. Developers, especially mobile developers, have that, I want to say, I might get booed for it, but we've had a pretty easy run through the Great Recession. Things weren't nearly as bad for us. There were usually jobs out there in mobile and in development in general. The unemployment numbers for developers were much lower than the general economy. We've always, for at least the past 10 years or so, been in a pretty good position to be able to find work. So we're not really too used to negotiating and compromising on the positions that we find. And what a lot of people don't factor in is remote is a big benefit to a job. If it's something that you want, if it's a perk that you're looking for, you may have to compromise on other aspects of the job. The type of work that you're doing, the pay scales for that work, things like that. So when you are looking for a remote job, keep in mind that it's going to function a little bit differently than a local job, and you need to be prepared for that. And what people never do, and it drives me nuts, that humans don't do this, is nobody ever asks. If a company comes to you, and it's really hard to ask about working remotely when you're applying to companies that aren't remote. But if a company comes to you and they say, hey, we found you on LinkedIn, or somebody recommended you to us, or we came across your resume, we're really interested in you, we want to work with you. Ask if you can work remote if that's important to you. And a lot of people think that won't go anywhere, but the reality is I know people for Apple computers who works remote, and I have them now. Showing my age. Well, Apple's traditionally been a company that's very much so, everybody's got to be in the Bay Area. So even a company like that will allow people to work remotely if it's a person that they want and they're willing to compromise on that from the company perspective. So if you're being recruited for a position and remote's important for you, you probably have a pretty good chance of negotiating that into the contract. I go back to the animations because I missed one. There we go. So this is exactly what I did back in 2004 because remote wasn't really a thing back then. 37 Signals was even around yet. There wasn't a lot of remote work. So what I did was I created my own freelancing gig and then I worked remotely. And that's a really good way to get into remote. I imagine a lot of people here started off as freelancers and got work for a company, and that company just didn't happen to be where they were located and have to go into the office. So if you really want a remote job, if you can't find the remote work, start freelancing and think about that way, or start your own consulting company and make it a remote company. So over the years, I've noticed a lot of common issues that keep popping up over and over and over again with people who are working remotely, and we think we found various solutions to help this. And these are things that have worked for us. They may not work for everybody. They might not work for every circumstance or situation, but I've had pretty good luck in with it. So I've noticed that companies who try to do remote, people who try to work remote, it goes one of three ways. The first is that it's amazingly successful. Everybody's like, I don't know why we haven't been doing remote forever. This is fantastic. We have great people. It's costing us less. We have less overhead. Everything's happy. Everything's great. Some companies try to do remote, and it's kind of wishy-washy. It's okay, but it's not really what we're looking for, and they kind of back out of it. And then the most common situation I see is there's such a spectacular failure with a remote team that it's amazing that there's not a death count attached to it. Just crashing and burning, just absolutely with it. And I think most of it relates around 5 or 6 very common type situations that you get into. So every time I interview somebody, one of the first questions I ask is, what do you think the hardest part about working remotely is? And about 90% of people respond to communication. And I'm not going to say that's not right because communication is extraordinarily vital in remote. It's also extremely vital in non-remote jobs, which is why I'm never really looking for that as the answer. You really have to communicate in any job, but it becomes a lot harder when you're working remote. There are a lot of developers who just like to put their head down and crank and write code and not worry about the other stuff. And that's really hard to do remotely because nobody can see you working. You work really hard all day, but it's hard for a manager, a superior to look at take account of lines of code. It's hard to measure productivity for a developer. The only real way to do it is compare them to another developer, and that's a terrible way of doing it too. So unless you have multiple people working on the same exact bugs on the same exact apps, just to have a basis of comparison, it's hard to figure out how well people are working. And the answer to it is communication. And the more specific remote answer to it is over-communicate. I was talking to a friend last night who's been working remotely for a while. I asked him the same question. He said, communication was the most important thing. We got into it a little bit, and he mentioned that he makes graphs for his employers that show exactly the performance increases and the productivity and exactly what's being worked on. And that's been a great solution for him. And I think that's, the answer is over-communicate with everybody who's wanting to know what's going on. Anytime I don't hear from one of our remote workers for a while, I start to get nervous because, even as somebody who's worked remote, embraced remote for a very long time, if you're not seeing somebody working, if you're not hearing from somebody working, I wonder if that person's sitting there watching Rick and Morty smoking hot, or I wonder if it's actually writing code. Don't know. So letting people know what you're working on, showing people, the progress that you're making on it is really important, much more so than just opening and closing bugs in the system. So the biggest problem I think people have working from home on a day-to-day basis is being distracted. Our houses are crazy filled with distractions. That's why we go to an office and get away from all those distractions. Doorbells, needing to change the laundry out, doing dishes, walking the dog, tending to a crying child, answering questions from your spouse, getting interrupted by your parents vacuuming in your same room, which is something that I still do when I go home for the holidays. In the middle of conference calls with Fortune 500 companies, they will come in and vacuum because they don't understand that I'm working. So there are a lot of distractions in the house. Running out for errands and things like that will eat into an entire day very, very fast. And I see this happen to a lot of remote people where they're getting all into it, they're gung-ho for it, and they sit down on Monday and they go, all right, well, I just got to run the dry cleaning in, and I'll go pick up lunch on the way back, and then I'll swing by the Apple store and pick up a new power brick, and it's 3:30 in the afternoon by the time they get back. They forget that they have a job. So my solution for distractions is ignore everything. Build a routine and pretend you're actually at work. I don't answer the doorbell when I'm at work. Any errands and stuff, I actually build into a lunch break instead of going out in the middle of the day and doing. I'll do it over an hour lunch break, and just ignore everything. Pretend it's an actual office, which that's a remote issue. Which leads to how to actually prevent interruptions and be productive at work. So, like I said, I always ask people what I think the biggest skill set for a remote worker is in communications. What I get a lot. What I believe it is, and it's subjective, I might be wrong, is I believe it's a routine. I think you have to have a very strict routine, and I say that because I've seen a lot of people, not set an alarm in the morning to get up and do remote work, and do lunch whenever they get hungry and get interrupted by errands. I've always treated a remote position and a remote job as if it was a real job. My alarm goes off in the morning at the same time every morning. I do my morning errands. I'm in the office by 9 a.m. sitting down at work. Come noon, I go out to lunch, and you build that same routine and you treat it like it's an actual workplace. And I find that just the nature of having a set routine like that removes a lot of the issues that people have getting distracted. I actually like to call it the arched office approach, which is a term I hadn't heard before in any of the other remote stuff I read. So I'm going to try to coin it, but it's not going to pick up. So I always recommend that remote workers have a completely separate area of their house to work in. And when you go into that room or that section and stuff, that's only for work. For example, I have an extra bedroom in my house. That's my home office, and the only time I'm ever in there is during the workday. I'm not in there playing video games. I'm not in there browsing the internet, downloading movies. I'm in there when it's work time. And because of that, it's like an arch that I walk through, and it makes me feel like I'm at work. It doesn't feel like part of my house anymore. The commute is 5 steps outside my bedroom, which is a fantastic commute, but it feels like an office. And I think that's important to have in your house. When I first started working remotely, I was living in a studio, so I didn't really have a separate spot. And I did a lot of my coding on the couch that I would watch TV on at night and stuff like that. And it just, you could never really get into the work. There was no clear distinction between work and home. And you wound up working late into the night or doing home stuff late into the morning. Having an arched office kind of separates those two parts of your brain. So productivity is a big deal for anybody working in development. I think more so in remote, but maybe it's not, particularly for remote. When you start having your own schedule and making your way into your own office and stuff, I think it becomes a little bit more important. The best solution I've ever found to make sure I stay productive myself and other people that I work with stay productive is to track your time. And it sounds like such a simple thing, track your time. Use a time graph to see how long you're working on stuff. But often, I work with people who haven't tracked time before, and then you get them tracking. At the end of the first week, they come back and you're like, I have no idea how much time they used to spend on stuff, how much time they wasted on Reddit or YouTube or exactly how much time each ticket takes and things like that, and just having a feel for where your time is going, how you're using your productivity, I think is really important there. In addition, on the note of productivity, it's easy to be productive and not have people realize you're being productive. It's when you're working remotely and you have tasks in the job that you have to get, it's not the time to be humble or modest about the stuff that you're doing. If you're not telling somebody about the bugs that you're going in and fixing or cleaning up something and making it faster, they might never know you did it. When I was still writing code, I used to go over a method and see something that wasn't working right in there or slow, and I'd go in and fix it. And it's easy to just kind of wave that off and stuff, but when you're trying to make sure that people believe you're actually doing your job, which is a big problem with remote, believing other somebody's actually doing the job, it's really important to let people know what you're doing. So this is one that bites a lot of people, time zone differences. Most people here have probably done the 9 p.m. meeting, working on the phone with people who are doing the 9 p.m. meeting because you're working in New York and they're working in India or Germany. And it's a big problem for remote people. And it's one of the big reasons a lot of companies have trouble hiring remote people. There's no easy solution or fix to this. What I have learned over the years is that you need a 4-hour overlap. You don't want to be making people in China work, East Coast hours. You don't want to be working, Chinese hours yourself. You don't want to be coming into the office at midnight and work, but you do need to find at least 4 hours a day between all the team members that are going to overlap. Otherwise, it's just too much that's not getting answered. People have questions during the day. There are problems with the API or something. There needs to be that piece of overlap. And, I mean, that's the best advice I can really give for time zone issues is ensure that there's 4 hours of overlap between the work days. So, as somebody who's come to the 360 every year since it started, as somebody who goes out and does the community stuff and has been around for a while, a big problem that remote people have, and I hate to use this word, it's like using synergy up here. We're going to synergize this. Is networking, which is terrible. It's hard for people who are working remotely to network and grow their careers. We grow our careers by meeting other people in the industry and talking to them and learning about opportunities, learning about doing better ways to do things, being able to share information. If you're holed up in your house the whole time, you're not going to be able to network. And a lot of times, if you're working for a traditional company that's not remote, it's easy to network. They're already all right there. So there's a lot of solutions for this problem. The first and my favorite, of course, is go to conferences. You're all here. You're doing it. Fantastic. This is where you meet people. I got my first book deal at a conference. I found a lot of people that I work with at conferences, and I've made great friends at conferences. I think if I hadn't done any conferences, if I never spoke at one, if I had never attended one, my career would be completely different. I might actually be working at Home Depot. With the internet and the modern age, there's a lot of other ways to kind of fill that networking need too. We have message boards for iOS and app development. We have community bulletins. We have social media, LinkedIn and Twitter. It might be killed yesterday. Cocoa Heads, other local developer meetups. If you're stuck inside working all day, you should try to make a conscious effort to get out once or twice a month and meet with other developers, whether you're just grabbing coffee or attending some sort of meetup. It makes a huge difference. And one of the ones that I still continually struggle with is the after-work drinks. I've been remote for a long time, as I've said, but I have had traditional jobs where you go in, and it's hard to replace that atmosphere of hey, let's all go out and work and grab a beer, and being able to hang out with coworkers outside of a work setting, and it's extremely hard to replicate that. It's been one of my main focuses for a very long time, trying to find ways to do it. And I can talk for hours about the different programs and ways, and playing video games after work and stuff that we do as a company, trying to replicate the let's go grab beers after work mentality. But it's hard to do. And my advice is actually going to be to skip it because it's so hard to do, and replace it with other things. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're dependent on an office for a really tight-knit community of friends, it's going to be really tough in a remote world. So I recommend having hobbies and interest friends and family and stuff outside of work that will kind of help fill that void. If you're one of those people who are just obsessed with iOS development and just 24/7, that's all you're thinking of doing. Remote might be real tough for you. But if you pick up other hobbies and interests and stuff, if you have a network outside, you're going to meetups and stuff like that, it can really help alleviate a lot of the problems that people face missing the atmosphere out there. So, really what we want to talk about today is being a good remote worker. And I've given a lot of advice and stuff on ways that you can edge towards that, but the reality is all you have to do is treat it like a job. And I found over the years that a lot of people don't treat remote jobs like a job. My parents didn't treat it like a job. You have to have that mindset of I'm going to work. It's not I'm in my house thinking around with code and somebody's paying me for it. You have to realize that somebody's paying you to do this work, that it's as important as if you were there. Set a routine, block out the distractions, pretend somebody's looking over your shoulder. Treat it like you would if you were in an actual office, If you had a boss right there who was watching you work. And that's really all it requires to be a good remote worker. For some reason, it eludes people of, treating a remote job like an actual job. And there is a huge difference between being good at your job and being good at doing your job. And that might sound like a semantic statement, but some developers who are really, really fantastic developers who are just some of the best people out there, I know for actually writing code, have a lot of trouble actually being good doing their job. And there's a lot more to just writing code than being a good developer. It's actually doing all the additional stuff that goes along with it, communicating with your team members, setting expectations, making sure you're available. And a lot of people unfortunately think just because they're a rock star developer that they can get away with not doing the other stuff. And they'll put up with all the drama and the nonsense and stuff if I'm just a really good developer. And the reality is that's not how it works at all. That's what I got today.